Conscious and correct, the subtext, the subject. Am I your business? He not my type. My type, it's just none of your business. You probably right. Probably right. People are so mean, and it's usually to themselves. So you could take it out on me. You just took it out on you, and you just took it out on you. What you think you gon' do? What you think I'm gon' do?
Greetings everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Audacity Show. This is my first official recap episode, a reflection on my first year launching this podcast, this show, this media platform, the conversations we had, the patterns that we exposed, and the signs that we were paying attention to throughout the year before they came into fruition, before they became headlines. So in today's episode, it's titled 2025 Recap, The Final Days. But before we begin, I'm going to go ahead and clear some negative energy, especially today on New Year's Eve, December 31st. I'm going to light some Palo Santo here as always. And, we want a clean slate when jumping on this, on the platform and talking about everything that we've experienced this year, everything that we went through. So much beauty, so much experience, so much lessons learned. And I know it's not just for me, it's for everyone. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I welcome everybody today. I hope everybody had a great year, a beautiful year. And we're going to recap some of the things that we witnessed, some of the things that we experienced, and how we should be closing out this 2025 cycle going into the new 2026 cycle. So, let's begin. So, off the rip, my first episode of the Audacity Show was on January 1st, I believe, the first week of January, and it was titled Chaos Out of Order. And what prompted me to go ahead and put out that episode, put out that video. I've done lives before. I've posted snaps and IG videos and stuff like that before. And since 2020, I've actually wanted to launch a platform like this where I can share information. But everything has its timing, And at that time, I didn't feel I was ready. I actually experienced probably the best year of my life in 2022. And since then, it was just confirmation and reassurances that this is something that I believe is my purpose as a Gemini, the Mercury sign, the communicator. I believe it's my purpose to share information and reach anybody in need of hearing this information and trying to be in alignment with my purpose. So that being said, in that episode, I broke down the symbolism behind what was reported as quote unquote a terror related attack involving the Tesla Cybertruck in front of Trump Tower on the first day of 2025. I wasn't really focused on the surface story. I was focused on what it symbolized. And that's what prompted me to put out that video. I stated clearly that Donald Trump and Elon Musk would dominate headlines throughout 2025. Their relationship would be strategic, volatile, because Trump is a Gemini. It was a big year for him. Elon Musk is, I believe, a Cancer. So, although they were close in birthdays, there's friction between those two signs at times. So I stated it would be volatile and temporary, right? And eventually there would be public display of friction. It would get out into the media because these are two individuals who are egotistical. They want to be in charge. They want to dominate. They want to be in power. So I've seen that happening, when you have two masculine energies like that, egotistical people going head to head, they're definitely gonna bump heads in a negative way for the public to see. And that's exactly what happened. You know, Elon Musk briefly became head of the Department of Government Efficiency, aka Dodge, a role that really didn't last long. We seen that only lasted a couple months. There was a very public falling out between them. The masses attempted to cancel Elon Musk at that time, and you know, we've experienced this before with individuals where they are canceled. So it's nothing new, you know. But here's what I said then, and I'll say it again now. What you see publicly is not always what's happening privately, right? Despite appearances, they remain on good terms behind the scenes. The separation was just optics, a psyop, psychological operation, not really war or turmoil between them. I think the falling out was public, but behind the scenes, they just had a mutual agreement. You know, that's like any celebrities. You know, you see an athlete dating a musician or something, and they have a public fallout. Behind the scenes, they can mutually agree to part ways. And I think that's what happened between Trump and Elon. Now, the Tesla Trump cycle connection is interesting, and I made an Instagram post about this. I explored the historical parallel between the name Tesla and Trump, right? Those two names, because Nikola Tesla and Donald Trump's uncle John G. Trump were once peers, acquaintances. They worked together, right? And that's how cycles repeat. Like back then, Tesla and John G. Trump were acquaintances, peers working together. And now, full circle 2025, Elon Musk, the person who put out a vehicle named after Nikola Tesla, and Donald Trump, the son of John G. Trump, are acquaintances, right? They have a relationship. So it's different players, same pattern. Nikola Tesla and John G. Trump had a fallout back then. It's recorded that John G. Trump was actually the person who gave up Nikola Tesla's location, and that's when they found him and apparently unalived him. They retrieved all his equipment or whatnot, and then you see that here with Donald Trump publicly was bashing Elon Musk, and Elon Musk retaliated. So it's interesting to see the patterns from 80 years ago to now again in the 2020s. Now, this year I attended, I don't want to get too much into details of whose summit it was, but I attended an AI summit in Boston, and there was a former Google employee there who mentioned that, and this was in April of 2025, they mentioned that Tesla had obtained government contracts. They had government contracts in place, and that information would be revealed. There was questions about homeland security interests and what was the relationship between Elon Musk and homeland security, and a possible militarization of the Cybertruck vehicles, of the EV vehicles. That really wasn't speculation. That was industry conversation, because recently we seen the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of War, come out and release information that they do have contracts with Elon Musk, not necessarily with Tesla, but with xAI, his artificial intelligence company. So what the information that I came across in April, 8 months ago, was just released a couple of weeks ago. So it's always best to put yourself in these rooms whenever possible. Attend, TED Talks, summits, conferences, especially if they're free. I believe one should, spend money on information, on access, and on growth, right? Because if you spend money on information, that'll help you make better rational decisions. You spend money on access, like I just spoke about, summits and networks and conferences or whatnot. You are there to network, to meet people, to put yourself in a position to better yourself. And you spend money on growth rather than materialism. You spend money on developing yourself, professional development, personal development, a gym trainer, physical development. You are bettering yourself. You are putting yourself in a position to add value to not only yourself, your life, but everyone around you. Now, the episode I dropped titled The Divided States of America, and that episode, everything I talked about there, it still resonates today. America is deeply fractured. We have Republicans versus Democrats still to this day. We have citizens versus the state versus the government. People don't feel comfortable right now with the government. This is not what they voted for. They were unsure who to vote for in the first place. I believe that people just voted for anybody at this point. Just try something different. And we also have immigrants versus the institutions, right? We have immigrants that are being deported, being hunted down, honestly, by ICE in public. And that's not something that sits well with me personally, and it shouldn't sit well with any individual who is for, pro humanity, pro mankind, a womankind, a society, a healthy society. Now, globally, the same patterns played out. We had Russia, Ukraine still at war. We have Israel and Palestine still going at it. We have China and Taiwan tensions. We got Iran involved. We have Venezuela under pressure now. The Central Americas, Trump is threatening Colombia. And what's critical to understand is this. Most of these are sacred lands that are being targeted. So Trump has targeted Venezuela for its resources. It's threatened Greenland because they are full of resources. It's threatened Canada, Mexico. Mexico has as much history, if not more history, than Egypt. Mexico, the Americas have more pyramids and hieroglyphs than Egypt. That's a fact. So these are sacred lands. This is nothing new. In 2000, 2001, 2002, around the time of 9/11, they attacked America attacked Iraq, which is formerly Mesopotamia. And we have, this is sacred land. The history there, ancient civilizations, their relics are still there. All this was destroyed. They went in there looking for resources and oil, but they don't pay attention to the history, the energy that's being destroyed there. Mesopotamia is one of the first cities in history, in civilization. So attacking these sacred lands, his latest attack was on Nigeria, right? And we know the importance of Africa. So that's critical to understand what's going on. This is not random. It's a resource-driven warfare masked as moral concern. They're putting false headlines out there like they're concerned about the American people, but really it's resource-driven. They just want to take over the resources that are there. They don't want to pay for it. They don't want to negotiate deals. They want to go in there and take it. That's literally the history of what America does. Now, we talked about the civil conflicts, the deportation issues, and ICE. The ICE activity has escalated. There's literally people being pulled from work, taken from cars, children targeted near schools, separated from their parents. This level of enforcement creates instability in the people. The people no longer trust the government. They no longer trust the police. They don't trust ICE. They don't trust the FBI. They don't trust the IRS, the CIA. All of this is in question. And the more damage they cause, the faster these institutions will crumble. And all of that is coming. We see the signs on the wall. We're seeing targeted rhetoric against Somalians right now, the communities of Minnesota, mainly the Somalian communities. Black and brown immigrant populations are being targeted. This is not a mistake, this isn't random. Nothing's ever random. There's over 30 countries that now sit on the U.S. ban list, from Somalia, Ethiopia, Eritrea, Haiti, Cuba, Iran, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and many more. Many more. Laos. I have co-workers and peers from Cambodia and Laos who are being deported. I have a good friend I grew up with being deported back to Venezuela. He's never been to Venezuela. He was brought here as a young boy. He's never been to Venezuela. My coworkers never been to Laos. They came over here fleeing the genocide at the time over there. They've never been there. They spent their whole lives here, and now they're being deported, and it's inhumane. This isn't protection. It's fracture amongst the system, amongst the government, and fracture in the people, because it's causing division. It's causing people to choose sides, and that's not what we want at this time. One of the most important headlines in 2025 was the whole Charlie Kirk incident. Now, the assassination of Charlie Kirk was amplified. It was blown out there, blown out of proportion, and then it was quickly buried. And I'm not into the politics. I don't know much about Charlie Kirk and his intentions and what he was doing, but I just pay attention to the signs. And what followed raised serious questions about what transpired. We've seen a ton of videos, different angles. Was he really hit? Was he really assassinated? Was it staged? We don't know what to believe, especially in a world where artificial intelligence, AI, we should expect a lot of deep fakes to come out. We seen recently Trump had a press conference, and a lot of people are pointing out that it was a deep fake. We seen artificial intelligence errors in the video. When you prompt AI to do something, and sometimes something in the background ain't just right, maybe something is blurry, it's not clear, something is misspelled or whatnot. These, errors were spotted in a Trump speech addressing the American people recently. So we got to pay attention to these deep fakes. However, some signs that we got to pay attention to with the whole Charlie Kirk thing was, his wife, Erica Kirk, that he just met 4 years ago, just married. She was supposedly, it came out that she was supposedly Miss Arizona for a beauty pageant like 10 years ago that Donald Trump hosted or sponsored. And that's where they first met, which is never random. That's very interesting. She meets Charlie Kirk at an interview. She wanted to go work for his company, Turning Point, gets married. 4 years later, he gets assassinated. She becomes CEO. Then she goes on a media run on every podcast and show possible, doesn't show any signs of grief. And it also came out that she had ties, her family had ties to a Romanian orphanage that was shut down over missing children. Now, we're not in Romania. I don't know what happened over there. This is information that's come out about her. I don't know what to believe, but I do read body language. That's what I study. Psychology. I'm almost done school. I will be a psychologist soon. And the most important, or one of the most important things, is not only awareness of yourself and others, body language, facial expressions, tone of voice, tonality, things like this. This lady shows no signs of grief at all whatsoever. Everything just seems staged. I seen a movie what was the name of the movie? Utopia. Utopia was a movie that came out in 2020, and it was with John Cusack, and they were like genetically modifying people and like creating clones or whatnot. And in that movie, it showed there was twin girls who actually look like Erica Kirk. They are blonde, young twin girls that one of them went rogue and she just wanted all the attention from the media. She went on a media run just like Erica Kirk, and it actually blew up the spot of the whole thesis of the movie about the cloning and all of that, because everybody spotted out the anomalies and the missteps, body language, and stories that weren't lining up. So I pay attention. I read books, YouTubes, and I see movies from a different lens now. And that was something when when every time I see videos of her, it reminds me of that girl from that movie. These aren't really conclusions. Again, these are just patterns worth questioning. R.P. Charlie Kirk, I have, nothing bad to say about any of them. Again, these are just patterns that I'm observing as an observer. Now, in my Modern Warfare series, I dropped 2 episodes on my Modern Warfare series, the Trade Wars episode and the Battle for Oil. In Trade Wars, I explained that the war today is not necessarily on land like it was in the past. It's more economic, psychological, spiritual, informational before it ever becomes physical. We talked about the tariffs that escalated, right? That's economic warfare. The tariffs against China, Mexico, Canada, Russia. In April, Trump released a list of like 50 plus countries targeting that he was targeting economically. Psychological operations. We're mentioning, this whole Charlie Kirk thing is a psyop. A lot of these things are psyops that we got to pay attention to. Spiritual warfare. People are starting to question religions. Informational warfare, deep fakes, artificial intelligence putting out false information, or at least not accurate, not 100% accurate information. These are signs of modern day warfare. And the Battle for Oil episode, the same narrative that was used against China. They were putting tariffs on them supposedly because the influx of drugs and fentanyl coming into the country. That's the same drug war narrative that was reused to justify the attacks on Venezuela, the oil ship seizures, the land operations recently over there. Venezuela is not a coincidence. They hold the largest oil reserves on earth. And then Nigeria, who they recently just attacked as well, are the world's largest producer of oil. And then Nigeria was told that it was an attack on ISIS, who was the original target, yet locals deny any ISIS presence on their land ever. They're confused. Meanwhile, we talked about Greenland and the untapped resources over there. Canada, Mexico, they're all being pressured and all of them are resource rich. This isn't a coincidence. I've posted screenshots on my Instagram of things that were planned for Agenda 2030, where they have America as one entity, the Americas, and included in that was Mexico, Canada, Greenland, Central America, South America. All of these bodies of land were included as one, entitled the New America. It's not a coincidence that Trump is offering an olive branch to Canada and Greenland, especially, the first piece was to Canada. He blatantly said it, come join America. We see what they're doing here, at least if you're paying attention. Now, I also posted on April 2025 a post titled Follow the Money. And that's when the markets were panicking. I said buy the dip. I kept posting about buy the dip. Follow the money, don't fear headlines. I specifically named Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon, Apple, Meta, Palantir, CrowdStrike, Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, and silver. And by December, every single one of those doubled or tripled. Now, Bitcoin and Ethereum crypto in general overall has pulled back somewhat since then. But if you got in at the April lows, you are at least up 100% on those names, at least double. This is why financial literacy matters. This is why it's important. You got to pay attention to the size. I put myself in a position where I doubled down on some of those names. I doubled down on my Google position, and now it's my largest position. It went from my smallest position to my largest position because it doubled since then. Gold, silver, I talked about in January, February that I was buying not only physical gold, but the ETF, GLD, gold. The ETF, SLV, silver. Silver over the past couple months is up like 150%. The biggest run it's had in the history of existence. You have to pay attention to the signs. And the reason precious metals like gold, silver, copper, platinum, these things are running is because with AI being big, building data centers or whatnot, you need conductivity, electrical conductivity, and silver and these metals provide that. Not only that, they're a hedge against inflation. They're a hedge against the US dollar. You should be buying physical silver, physical gold, not just, chains and watches and bracelets, actual physical bars and coins online. Costco even sells gold bars now. This is why you need to diversify. When they talk about diversifying your portfolio, yeah, it's real estate, businesses, stocks, crypto, but it's also precious metals, commodities. All of this is important. Now, going into 2026, I remain cautiously optimistic. I reduced some tech exposure. I reduced my position. I actually got out of my position in Meta. I was up over 50%. I got out from that position and I bought more of the gold ETF. And Netflix was down at the time. And I bought, half of a position of Netflix. Right now, I'm maintaining my core positions like Google, Microsoft, Nvidia, Amazon. Those are my core positions. Those are still there. I bought some gold. I bought a little bit of Netflix. I'm looking to get back into silver. Silver went up to $70+. The ETF SLV went up to $70+. It's pulled back a little bit to around 65. I'm actually waiting for a pullback. I think it's gonna get back to like $50. Once it gets back around $50, it's taking off from there. Now, I think a larger correction may arrive in 2027 and beyond. So for right now, I'm just being cautiously optimistic. Reduce some exposure. If you haven't got into these positions, don't rush into them right now. Right now is not the time for that. It was in April. There will be other opportunities. Now, I also talked about the collapse of the Hollywood culture. We saw the cancellation again of Kanye West over his swastika symbol. And in my most recent episode, I dropped about the Hopis. I talked about the significance of that symbol and how it's not what the Europeans put it out to be. It's has nothing to do with what they claim. These symbols are sacred. So we seen that. We seen the imprisonment of Diddy, and we seen how much headline attention that got. We seen Kendrick and Drake right? They dominated the headlines, the beef between them, civil war. I talked about Kendrick and SZA, the singer SZA, having a good year, and we seen them repeatedly, each month. Headlines: Kendrick made the Super Bowl halftime. He brought her out there with him, right? SZA had her strongest year. She won a ton of awards. She was everywhere. She appeared in a TV series. And then we seen some media declines, like Drake's presence declined a bit. We seen most recently that Nicki Minaj aligned herself politically with that whole Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, JD Vance situation. And then she was, I don't know if you want to call it canceled, but she vanished from social media. She deleted her Instagram. Allegedly, they said she lost over 10 million followers after that interview. Summer Walker, who puts out good music for the ladies or whatnot, but her image has been diminished, and I believe it will continue to decline because she was promoting destructive identity narratives. Like, she was glorifying being a side chick. And as as a woman, you should carry yourself better than that. And I know a lot of women were talking about, like, oh, well, we don't believe in the same thing she was talking about. We just like her music. Okay, but you gotta detach from that at some point. I myself grew up about, male artists talking about drugs and violence in the streets and gangs and all this stuff. I get it. But that's the culture that they've cultivated. You can transition from that. I've been listening to less of that and to more, Spanish music and meditative music and old school 90s R&B, to kind of detach from that. We seen a shift away from that street culture. The artists are now screaming F the streets. They're telling the youth to focus on their skills and talents, growth, leave the streets behind. And that matters. That's important. I want to shout out D1 from New Orleans. Speaking about New Orleans, I came on here and told you LA and New Orleans was gonna trend. Guess who was trending all year for positivity? A New Orleans artist, D1. I salute the brother. Everything he's doing, big ups to him. He's shifting the culture by himself. I love what he's doing, and he's getting his flowers from people that contributed to the damage, to the chaos out there. He's receiving his flowers. So I love that. It's beautiful to see. I got to check him out at one of his Tufts seminars out here soon, inshallah. Now, I also talked about cosmic alignment and warnings in my syzygy episode. We discussed the planetary alignment that was, around February or March and the significance of that. We talked about solar activity picking up recently. We talk about the changes on Earth, as above, so below. I always talk about that. Whatever we see change in the stars and the cosmos, we're going to feel that here on Earth. And we did. We saw earthquakes, plenty earthquakes. We saw solar storms, volcanoes erupting, megaquakes. We seen all of that. And I mentioned that in syzygy because it's not the first time the planet's been in alignment like that. There was most of the planets, I believe it was 6, 7 planets in alignment. It's not the first time that happened. We got to pay attention to these patterns. The first time that happened, guess what followed? Earthquakes, solar activity, natural disasters, volcano eruptions. So it only makes sense that it will happen again. And I grabbed some information online, YouTube. The book The Jupiter Effect talks about that. Edgar Cayce. Edgar Cayce was, back in the day, I guess he had psychic abilities. He had visions that he tapped into. And Edgar Cayce always warned to watch the volcano activities, specifically the volcanoes around the Caribbean area and the volcanoes in Italy. He mentioned Mount Vesuvius in Italy, which was the same volcano that destroyed Pompeii back in the day. And since December 27th, just 4 or 5 days ago, news has been coming out that Italy has experienced heightened volcano activity. So we got to pay attention to that. We got to pay attention to the shorelines. We got to pay attention to the San Andreas fault that I talked about before in that episode. All of this is alignment, correlation. Nothing is coincidence. In my PSA episode, plane safety announcement, we talked about the issues in the skies. We talked about the magnetic field instability. We talked about solar interference from the solar rays. We talked about the increase in plane accidents, crashes, and it's not just commercial planes, it's private planes, jets, helicopters, drones. This trend has continued. It's actually been going on for over 2 years now. So I'm not here fear mongering. I personally go on I take a trip yearly. This year I didn't take any. I didn't feel comfortable. And that's just me. I've seen a ton of people go on flights left and right, and thank God everyone's okay, and I wish them nothing but the best. And I want them to enjoy themselves and do what they love, what they believe in intuitively. Me personally, right now I'd rather take a road trip. I'd rather take a road trip somewhere. That's just me. Just remain cautious out there. Um, in my one of my most recent videos, the 1111 portal, I spoke about these cosmic windows, these days of alignment. I talked about how important they are. We should be using these days for meditation, for reflection, alignment with the cosmos at this time. These are days such as November 11th, 11/11, August 8th, the Lionsgate 8/8 portal, we, solar eclipses, lunar events, full moons, meteor showers, the Sirius dog days in July. These are very important, and specifically in 2026, the Sirius dog days is in alignment with America's 250th birthday, which Trump has a lot of things going on around that time. He's already planning some, events, let's just say. So we got to pay attention to what happens during that time. We also got to pay attention to the Three Eye Atlas situation. Three Eye Atlas is an interstellar object that appeared during the Sirius dog days this year in 2025. And it passed by Earth recently. Right now it's making its way near Jupiter, which the energy around Jupiter is something called, I believe it's called a cosmic slingshot, where that energy, the gravity out there can sling it back to where it came from, or it can sling it right back around here to Earth. So we got to pay attention to Three Eye Atlas if it comes back around this way, and the importance of that. Nothing is ever random, and I think Three Eye Atlas is important. I talked about Three Eye Atlas during my Hopi prophecies episode. You know how the Hopi speak of the blue star Kachina, which the Three Eye Atlas was lighting up blue. They talked about a cosmic event in the stars with a blue signal. They talked about the end of the fourth world going into the fifth world. They call the end of the fourth world the final days. This is why I titled this episode The Final Days. I believe this is the end of the fourth world. We're going into the fifth world. And this isn't an end of the world conspiracy theories. No, this is a mindset. We're going to a period of cleansing, a period of purification. Everyone should be leveling up right now. You either level up or get left behind, The Hopis spoke about signs that included the collapse of institutions. We talked about that earlier. The education system, the healthcare system, all of this stuff is failing us. They had signs talking about migrations, division amongst the people, rebirth in the year of the great purification. They called for self-governance amongst the people. That's why you see new political parties being built apart from the Dems and the Republicans. They called for education reform. They called for fair health care. You seen earlier this year that a United Healthcare CEO was unalived by a young man who read a book about the unfair activities of healthcare systems. He took offense to that and unalived somebody. The Hopi called for fair healthcare and things like that, right? They called for the closing of the wealth gap. There is no middle class anymore. There's the wealthy and the non-wealthy, the rich and the poor. There is no more middle class. So don't let that fool you. We have people that are making six figures. And these are statistics. They're making over six figures and they are downgrading to shop at like Walmart and dollar stores now, when before over six figures was considered wealthy, right? They called for freedom of speech. This year, 2026, is a revolutionary year. It's going to be a lot of freedom of speech, a lot of revolutions. And I'm not talking about physically on the front lines, but a lot of protests, a lot of pushback from the people. We will see that in 2026 and beyond. They talked about the end of racism and division. We could see a trend towards that with everything that's going on, the division that's going on amongst the people and the nations. We could see people start to stand up for each other and push back against that. They called for civilian rights. They called for they said to look out for a great migration around this time. And we're witnessing every one of these. The Great Migration, in my opinion, the return of the Great Migration is the whole deportation situation. If you deport the immigrants from U.S., which is probably like a third of the U.S., or maybe more, where are they going to go? They fled their own home countries for a reason. Some of them might go back there. Others are going to migrate elsewhere. The Great Migration. Now, what comes next is important. I want to close with meaning and purpose. And I did a book review recently, a couple weeks ago. And the first book review I shared was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. Because I believe books are a tool for growth. Knowledge is survival. Applied knowledge is power. So that first book review was from a video of 2022. I recorded, I never put it out. I just wanted it to share with the people because I believe these, books are important and they're ad free. Netflix and Hulu and all of this are killing us with these ads, right? Books are ad free and they're cheaper than ever. And getting physical books, whatever you're reading, is important. But getting physical books at this time where everything is digital is like collecting an asset. At least that's how I feel. So more book reviews, inshallah, will be on the way. I'll try to do a couple of those throughout the year. Ramadan. I did an episode, The Power of Ramadan, in 2025. Ramadan 2026 is approaching. Less than 60 days, we will have Ramadan 2026, inshallah. I talked about the power of discipline and unity, reflection and cleansing during the period of Ramadan. 2025 was my 10th year doing Ramadan. Inshallah, 26 will be my 11th. I will be dropping a sequel to that episode in a couple of weeks. Now, I made a post on my Instagram about freeing the people. And when I say free the people, I'm talking about us. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about Venezuela. I'm talking about Somalia, Nigeria, Palestine, Iran, Taiwan, Laos, Cambodia, Russia, Ukraine, you name it. Free the people. Free the people is all we want. Our ancestors fought for unity and togetherness, the collective being of society, of consciousness. Free the people. Those who do not belong will get rid of themselves. Till then, we should give everybody an opportunity to prove themselves. I believe 2026 will bring revolution, protest, and economic shift away from the usual. The housing crisis is an issue that might collapse. Time to prepare to buy a house. The migration situation will amplify in 2026, I believe. The AI dominance will continue. We're going on 4+ years of AI. You must master AI in this time or get left behind. I don't know what you're waiting for. Whatever field you're in, whatever professional industry you're in, healthcare, finance, community, skills, you name it, right? Hospitality, AI will be integrated in each one of these industries, every single industry that we know today. If you master AI now, you have a better chance of keeping that position, keeping that role, being of value in that role. Because if you get left behind, that's when they get AI to replace you. So please, do your best to learn. Baby steps if you have to, but learn. Especially, if you're in healthcare, learn how AI is changing healthcare. If you are in finance, learn how AI is changing finance. Master that specific industry, that specific field regarding artificial intelligence. Now, a couple things to watch for. The Hopis talked about a true white brother, and by white they mean light, enlightened. They talked about a true white brother that will reveal ancient messages, and he or she will be cloaked in red. And when I thought about that, came across the readings about that, the first thing that came into my mind was the Pope. So watch the Pope, the messages they share, anything that he reveals. Watch the Vatican. I think, revelations, no pun intended, are coming from the Vatican. Watch Venezuela. I believe that's going to intensify. The shamans in Peru recently, they predicted that President Maduro of Venezuela is going to flee the country. He's not going to get unalive. He's actually going to flee the country. They also predicted to watch Trump's health, Donald Trump. Now, not wishing nothing negative on nobody. This is what the Peruvian shamans just predicted. They predicted that he will fall seriously ill. And the most interesting part about that is that if you watch a Simpsons episode from the 90s, when President Trump was a president, he became ill at that time before the 2028 elections, because there were signs of Trump 2028, and then he became ill. And that's when Lisa Simpson became president. She inherited an economy in collapse with the highest debt ever on record. I mean, all of that's playing out right now. So we got to pay attention to that. Nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is final. Except these days. Except the fourth world. Except the current world we're living in. This is the finale. We must step into better versions of ourselves. We must be better. We must want better. We must think better. We must do better. Do it for your loved ones, for your children, but most importantly, do it for yourself. This is a time to level up. This is a time to eliminate anything that's not aligned with your inner self. If you are a habitual smoker, drinker, this is the time to let go of these things. If you can't let go of it 100%, this is the time to cut down. Cigarettes, marijuana, alcohol, pornography, gambling, distractions. This is the time to let go of these things and go into the new year cleansing, purification period, detox from these things. None of them benefit you in the long run. You must focus on yourself, be a better version of yourself, focus on your inner self, your inner awareness, your inner truth, your authenticity. Be true to yourself. How can you be real with anybody else? Everyone claims they're real in this world. How can you be real with anybody else if you're not real with yourself? Well, this is the time to be real with yourself. This is the time to lock in, to tap in, and step into this new cycle, a new you. Everyone always screams, new year, new me. But you got to really live that. You really got to manifest that. New year, new you. For real this time. Nobody's coming to save you. Nobody's coming to save us. We got to save ourselves. And to do that, you got to be the best version of yourself. Build real connections out there. Detach from the illusion. Stay grounded. Choose authenticity over the illusion. This is not the end. This is just a transition period. And I pray you all come along for the ride. Greatest time to be alive. With that being said, peace, love, and light to everyone. Inshallah, I'll see you in the next episode. Next year, new episode dropping very soon. And the transmission.
You just took it out on you. And you just took it out on you. What you think you gon' do? What you think I'm gon' do? Yeah. Yo, the system was designed for me to be a system. Look what they put my sister in. Now I gotta sit with this. I'm really sick of this, but I'm an optimist. I think it could be a better way, but I got too much to say. This was for fun, but I think I found my lane. They'll tell you that you're weird until they do the same thing, but you gotta give them grace, cause you were just there and it was probably yesterday. So be careful what you say. You could tell me to my face what they gon' do, cause you're already doing it to you. People talk too much, they should listen, but they don't want advice. They want attention, they want someone to be mad with. They want a badge, they want an experience they never had. They want it now, not knowing that they're free. The audacity to be the bad guy. And that's why you need people like me to tell you that you're free. The audacity to be. And I'ma tell you They want me to be mad at you, oh, they want you to be mad at me. But if we see that we're free, the audacity, then I'ma tell you the audacity to begin. I'ma tell you the most beautiful word.